In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning. One day, then God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." God made the expanse and separated the waters from the for which were below the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse, and it was so. God called the expanse heaven, and there was evening and there was morning, a second day. Then God said, "Let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place, and let dry land appear," and it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters he called seas. Then God saw that it was good. And then God grew vegetables, plants, brought fish, brought animals, made heavens and dirt and islands and a lot of animals like birds and sea monsters, probably referring to sharks or something, dinosaurs. But yeah, and then he made man, and then he blessed the men and said, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and rule over everything." So yeah, and he rested on the seventh day. God made fruit trees and plants that grew good fruits for everything that's alive to eat. So Adam, the person that God created, lived a very happy life. And God thought he was lonely, which is probably false, but that doesn't matter. God took one of Adam's ribs and made a woman out of it and named her Eve. So Adam and Eve were a very happy couple, and they lived a plentiful life with everything they ever need. So yeah, and then one day, this serpent came up to them. This serpent came up to them and tempted them to eat the forbidden fruit. At first, Adam and Eve didn't want to do it, but then Eve finally gave in to the temptation and ate the forbidden fruit. And she also convinced Adam to do so as well. And God found out that they have eaten the fruit when they hid from him in a bush because they were naked. And so that's when sin enters the world because they ate the fruit. Yeah, and we lived a terrible life because of sin, and we die and we get hurt and we have to work, which sucks. So yeah. And then a lot of terrible things happen in the world, like Cain and Abel. Cain was very jealous of his brother, and he ended up killing him because of this jealousy. And that is one of the first acts of sin that we've seen in the Bible. So yeah, that happened, and that really sucks because they died. And then God decided to restart everything. So he told Noah to get 2 of every single species and put them into the ark that he instructed Noah to build. So they can reproduce after he sends a flood to wipe out everything on earth. So Noah did that, and after the flood, and after everything was wiped out, Noah let the animals go free to reproduce. So, yeah. So then God made a covenant with someone named Abraham, who was too old to have children. and told him that he will have as many sons as there are stars in the sky. And one of them will be able to save everyone from sin. So then he was like, well, okay, but what do I have to do? And then God told him to get some sheep and lamb and then cut them in half and walk through it. Because if they break the covenant, that's what's gonna happen to them. Cut in half. So pretty cruel, but that's the covenant. God will also give Abraham a piece of land for his children to rule in, and also change his name to Abraham. So moving on to the story of Exodus. In the end of Genesis, we know that Joseph became good friends with the king, and the Israelites had a great relationship and had a lot of power in Egypt. But in the beginning of Exodus, there was a new king, and they don't know who Joseph is, and he was kind of jealous of the Israelites. So he rose up against them and enslaved them. So the main character of this arc, we can say, is Moses. And he is supposed to save the Israelites from the Egyptian king. So Moses was not a very brave man. He didn't really want to do this at first because he did not think he was going to survive, as everyone would feel. But God appeared to him as a burning bush and changed his mind, and he decided that he will save all the Israelites with God on his side. So once Moses enters Egypt, he introduces him to the king, and requested that they release all the Israelites. But the king didn't like that idea, and he refused. So Moses used God's powers to place many misfortunes on Egypt, like frogs falling from the sky, the sea turning into blood, stuff like that. And it was terrible for everyone, except for the Israelites, because they were protected by God. So then, finally, the king was like, okay, we've had enough. We'll let them go. And so Moses brought every Egyptian out of every Israelite out of Egypt. And they were happy. But then the king of Egypt had a change of heart. And he was like, you know what? No, we're going to get the Israelites back, and they can't stop us. So then he brought his army. He chased the Israelites all the way to the Red Sea. And Moses thought that's where he was going to die because they can't exactly swim across the Red Sea. So God gave him the power to split the sea apart to make way for them to walk across, which really surprised the Egyptians because they were Egyptians. They didn't know how to part seas. Neither did everyone back then or even today. But anyways, the Israelites walked through the sea while the Egyptians chased after them in the way that the water cleared out. But God murdered them by closing the sea on top of them. So the Israelites were safe now. The Egyptians weren't, not so much, but okay. They don't matter anymore.